Well, I'm available to start at right tackle.
You can't see when I have clothes on.
All right. Well, there's not an even playing field. There's never been an even playing field. There never will be an even playing field.
What shampoo do you use on your hair?
You don't need to be Superman to play in this offense.
You're listening to The Red Zone.
Welcome, Badgers fans, to another episode of The Red Zone. I'm your host, Jason Galloway from the Wisconsin State Journal. We already did our first episode of the week with Jim Polzine and Caden Lyle, so make sure you check that out on iTunes or Google Play or madison.com. And we are getting into our Mailbag episode of the week that we do every Friday. I already asked for your questions on Twitter, so I'm going to go ahead and get right into them. Let's see the first one from Colin Most, at Colin Most, or Colin Most maybe. He asks, hypothetically speaking, if the Badgers lose to either Michigan or Penn State but win out the rest of their schedule, including the Big Ten Championship, do you think they make the playoff? No, Colin, I really can't see them making it unless they win out. 11-2 in a Big Ten Championship. I with one of those losses to BYU, especially, and maybe BYU turns into a decent team this year, but they've already lost to Cal. It's not like they're going to be a world beater or anything. Even if they are a decent team, a top 25 team, I just think with two losses, I just can't really see it happening. At that point, if they lost to either Michigan or Penn State, then I guess they would only have one real marquee win, whether it's the Michigan game or the Penn State game, likely. Well, along with the Big Ten Championship game, obviously that would be a marquee win as well. But I just think there's going to be other conference champions that are either undefeated or have one loss. I think when you look at how good Alabama and Georgia have started the season, I think there's a decent chance that the SEC could get two teams in again. LSU started the season well as well. Oklahoma has looked pretty good so far, and I just don't think that spot's going to be there for Wisconsin if they have two losses. So I honestly don't think it's. I think they'd have to win out to have a chance to get in. I think if they do win out and they do happen to go to Michigan and go to Penn State and win those games and then win the Big Ten title game, I think people will look at the BYU game more as an early season fluke. Rather than a good indication of what this team is, and I think that they'll get, a playoff level respect, and that they should be able to get in then. But I don't think this team's going to be able to do that. I think you look at some of the issues they've had early in the season here and how poorly they played against BYU. I think you'd be hard pressed to believe that Wisconsin can go and win the rest of their games on the schedule, including a Big Ten title game against another really good opponent. So. You can still dream because they do have only one loss right now, but I think once they get that second one, I think it's definitely over at that point. Let's see. Matt Davis at Matt Davis asks, why did last week not work for the Badgers? Forcing Hornibrook to beat you is not a new strategy. Was the defense more porous than usual? Did the O-line not eventually grind the opposing offensive line down? Yeah, our film room this week, we do a film room story on madison.com every week, every Wednesday, or normally post on Tuesday actually, but this week it was Wednesday morning. And we just took a look at kind of what went wrong, a lot of what you're talking about, Matt. I think I think Xander Neville going out was a really big deal for their running game. I think as I showed on the film room story, if you guys want to go check that out, there were quite a few plays that were blown up because tight ends missed blocks, and the offensive line didn't have their best game either. Particularly David Edwards, I highlighted as someone who kind of made some mistakes in the run game, and it just wasn't their best game overall up front, and they couldn't get the running game going that consistently because of it. Jonathan Taylor did break off some runs, but I think on the whole they just weren't consistent enough blocking for him to be able to do exactly what they wanted to do running the ball. And defensively, we talked about that too. The jet sweep gave them issues. The motion pre-snap gave them issues. There were some communication errors. The first two games we were pretty optimistic about what the defense did the first two games, but they come up against this physical BYU team and a team that does a lot of a lot of kind of tricky stuff before the snap, and it looks like they definitely had some issues that they weren't able to work out. And there was also 10 missed tackles in this game, which is a little uncharacteristic of what we've seen from this defense the last few years. Some missed gaps, and just so I mean I think there were just a lot of mental and physical errors defensively, and it's going to be interesting to see how that side of the ball bounces back, because we didn't know what to expect from this defense heading into the season, and the first real test they saw, they didn't play well. So against Iowa, it's going to be really interesting to see if they can bounce back and correct a lot of those errors. Let's see, Nathan J. Welch asks, could the Badger beat writers take down the Hawkeye beat writers in a game of 7-on-7 for the Rusty Keyboard Trophy? Well, I'm not familiar enough with Iowa media members to know exactly who would win that game. I think we would have some talent on the Wisconsin side. I think Jesse Temple was a Division III basketball player, really athletic guy. I'm sure he could do a lot for our side. We have some other guys. Obviously I think both sides would have some liabilities, but that's a good question. I'm not really sure who would win that one. Richard Carlson at RDK1212. He asked, why did JT not touch the ball on the last 8 offensive plays from scrimmage? I think a lot of that was just because they were behind and they wanted to go with their 2-minute drill passing down offense on the field. And Garrett Groshek is that guy for them. He's a guy that they like as a pass catcher a lot more than Taylor, and Groshek had been making some plays out there. He had been playing well in the second half leading up to that point, and so I think they also wanted to kind of ride him as well. That's just what you're going to see in passing situations, and in whether it's a passing down or just a 2-minute drill. Either Garrett Groshek or Chris James are going to be the guys that are out there, because we've seen from Jonathan Taylor, he still has a lot of work to do, and as a pass protector, his hands aren't where you'd like them to be. He's dropped some passes this season, and he's tried to work on that in the offseason, but he's just not quite there yet. And so you could look at the game and say, well, the last offensive plays when the game was on the line, your best player's not on the field. But I also think that they didn't really have a whole lot of time during that last drive to be able to run the ball. So that's kind of where it comes from there. They wanted to have a guy in there in Groshek that could make a lot of plays in the passing game, and I thought he played well. So again, it's a tough one, and you maybe could have worked him in a little bit there, but I think they just wanted to go with the passing down back. Let's see. South Jersey Pete at S Jersey Pete asks, it's too late now, but the defense really missed Van Ginkel on Saturday. Johnson was also hobbled. Do you think Arrington Farrar could have helped? Christian Bell looked overmatched or in the wrong position. That's really an interesting question. I think Farrar maybe could have helped. Christian Bell played 40 snaps, but I don't necessarily think that he would have played all that much. I think he probably would have worked in there, possibly. Maybe he would have worked in there instead of Noah Burks for the few snaps he got. But you got to remember, before Farrar left the program, before the season started, throughout fall camp, Christian Bell was taking all the second team reps with Tyler Johnson and not Farrar. And I think they would have, it looked like in fall camp they preferred Christian Bell at this point over Farrar. So I think they still would have given Christian Bell that chance out there to play a high volume of snaps. And I've seen a lot of people say that the Bell wasn't good, and I think he has a lot of things to improve on, but I don't think he was. I don't think he was all that bad against the run. I mean, it was he still has a lot of room to grow, and I don't think he really gave them much as a pass rusher. But I don't think he was. I don't think he was necessarily the reason that Wisconsin had their issues with some of the BYU's running game. I don't think he was. I don't think he was actually that bad, but. I think with, Van Ginkel is questionable. I guess I'll go over the injuries now. I don't know if anyone specifically asked about those, but Van Ginkel and Xander Neville are both still questionable heading into this game for Saturday. They're going to be game time decisions, Paul Chris said on Thursday, and, we'll just have to wait and see if those guys can play, and I think they're both really big losses if they're not able to go, and, specifically on defense. Now, I will say, even if Van Ginkel can't go. It does seem like Tyler Johnson, maybe another week for him to get a little healthier. If he can give them some more snaps, I think he only played 5 snaps last week against BYU. So if he's a little healthier, then maybe he can give you a little more work, and Christian Bell doesn't have to be out there for 40 snaps. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Neville might have a little bit better chance to play than Van Ginkel. Back on Tuesday, we knew Neville was already getting a little bit of work in, and Van Ginkel, I don't think, did anything until at least Wednesday. So we'll just have to see kind of how those play out in the end. Let's see. Ryder Cup Captain at Cup Captain asks, whose voices are heard during the trailer at the beginning of your podcast? Yeah, that intro has been there for a while, so I guess I guess some of the newer listeners don't really remember those where those came from on those episodes. I think it starts off, and I'm trying to remember it in my head. I think it starts off with Benjamin Wargle, who I think it's Benjamin Wargle to start, and then my voice is obviously on there. And Tom Oates is our columnist at the State Journal, is the one who says that there's not going to be an even playing field, and then Joel Stavi's at the end. The guy that says you don't need to be Superman to play in this offense. That's Joel Stavi back from 2015. So I could be missing a voice. I think that might be it, but yeah. So for those of you who don't know, maybe at some point we'll get a new intro on there with some more recent sound clips though. Let's see a couple questions from Bill_Woj at slow_creek. He asks, any chance we will see Cade Green anytime soon? And as well, he also asks, with Van Ginkel likely out and Tyler Johnson banged up, any chance Sanborn will be moved outside? With Cade Green, I don't think that's going to happen. He wasn't getting a whole lot of reps during camp, and then with Danny Davis back now, you have your definite, your top 3 of Davis, Pryor, and Taylor, and then Jack Dunn and Adam Krumholtz both look like, and Aaron Cruikshank for that matter, all 3 of those guys look like they're ahead of Cade Green right now. So I think it would take quite a few injury issues or something to happen for Green to get his chance. But we'll have to see. Both him and Emmett Perry, are guys from a couple years ago that came in that haven't really had their opportunities yet. But we'll just have to see if that time comes for them. I don't think it's going to be this season, but we'll have to see later on in their career. And then with I guess we touched on this the outside linebacker situation earlier. I don't think Sanborn's going to be moved out there. This is still a true freshman that was not an early enrollee. He's only been on campus for a couple, a few months at this point still, and he's been working at inside linebacker the entire time. And I don't think. Look, I think Tyler Johnson is getting healthier. I don't know exactly how healthy he is, but he might be able to give you a little bit more on Saturday if Van Ginkel is out. And Christian Bell, like I said, I didn't think he was quite as bad as maybe some people did. But again, so I think if you get through this game and then you get through the bye week, maybe Tyler Johnson and Van Ginkel for that matter will actually be healthy by that point. I don't think you're going to try to shoehorn Sanborn in there on the outside for this one game before those guys might be back. So I don't see that happening now. All right, let's move on to the next one from Pete Hansen at HansenP102670. He asks, we already talked about this. Another question on Christian Bell. What did the tape show on Christian Bell? He appeared to be bad at setting the edge against runs, but what did he do right and wrong, and what do we think about him moving forward? Also, if Hornibrook has another showing against Iowa like last season, do they open up QB? Yeah, we talked about Bell. Like I said, I don't think he was that bad against the run. I think he really didn't give them anything from a pass rushing standpoint, and he definitely could be better. I think on some of their jet sweeps, BYU's big gains on jet sweeps, and I kind of pointed to this in the film room, but Christian Bell really, I think he actually did set the edge and force the guy inside on a few of those occasions, and there was just nobody inside to make the tackle because there was some miscommunication or a misread, or some of those plays you can't really tell exactly what went wrong, but I don't think I think Bell can be, and again, I don't think they're going to need Bell to fill in for long. Like I said, Van Ginkel's questionable to play this week, and then they have a bye week. So I think by the time they get to the Nebraska game after the bye week, I think Van Ginkel should be able to play at that point. Tyler Johnson should be a lot more healed. So I don't think they'll have to rely on on Bell much after this week unless something else happens or more injuries come. So I don't think I don't think he was great in his first game, but I also don't think he was necessarily a liability out there. So we'll have to see how he continues to progress. And then your other question, I think it's going to take more than a really bad performance against Iowa for them to give Jack Cohn a chance. I do think Cohn has made a lot of improvement from last year, and I think they'd feel a lot more comfortable putting him in there if something happened to Hornibrook. But I also think that Paul Chris has a lot of trust in Hornibrook, and I think he likes him as a player. And while Hornibrook did throw that really bad interception against BYU, that they kind of turned the game in some ways, and I think he's still a while from giving Cohn a chance. So I wouldn't anticipate Cohn challenging this season, but we'll kind of wait and see how that develops. Let's see the next one from Christopher J. Smith at TCS_Irish. He asks, Iowa media and BYU. The Iowa media said BYU cracked the Wisconsin code. Iowa can do the same. Pre-snap motion was the problem for Wisconsin defense. Why was it an issue, and what does Wisconsin need to do to correct against Iowa? Can Alex Hornibrook spread the field and throw deep? Iowa wants to force this. So I guess we talked about this a little bit defensively already, but I think a lot of the issues, again, I think BYU's offense was a little bit, they did a lot of stuff that Wisconsin's not going to see against Iowa. Not only obviously they had a lot of the jet sweeps, but they did some weird stuff pre-snap by, I mentioned this in the film room story too. They had, sometimes they would unbalance their line. They would send one of their tackles to the other side of the formation at the, right, before the snap. And they did some weird stuff like that. And I don't, I don't know why. I honestly can't, after rewatching the film, I can't really understand, exactly what went wrong on every play and exactly why it went as poorly as it did. Obviously there were some instances where guys got confused and they weren't doing the right thing, and that stuff has got to be cleaned up. This is a new defense from last season, and it just doesn't look like they're quite ready to be one of the top defenses in the country like we've seen the last few years. And they were, I guess the puzzling part about it is that there were a lot of, the few experienced players they do have also made some mistakes. I pointed out on BYU's first long run that TJ Edwards looked like he kind of missed his gap, and Ryan Connolly maybe had a little, a couple errors there as well. And it's just one of those games that against a little bit of a weird offensive scheme that they just didn't seem like they. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was really that they weren't prepared well enough, or that in the moment of the game they just made some poor reads. But for whatever it was, it's going to be interesting to see that if they're able to correct that going forward. I don't think Iowa is going to be quite a similar situation. Iowa's offense is a little bit more conventional, I guess you could say. So I think it's going to be another physical game for this defense, though, and I think the defensive line really needs to step up in this game. I think obviously that's one of the weaker parts of the team with a lot of the new guys they have on the field, and they're going to have to try to allow Wisconsin to hold their own at the line of scrimmage to, I think to be able to really compete in this game. And then can Alex Hornibrook spread the field and throw deep? I think he can. Obviously Wisconsin wants to. They obviously want to run the football, and that's always been their offense. They've had a lot of success doing that, and I think Iowa does want to force. Iowa is going to want to force them to put the ball in Alex Hornibrook's hands, and he's got to play a little bit better and a little bit more consistently if Iowa does stack the box and kind of make him beat them. I do think maybe this could be a bigger jet sweep game for Wisconsin. That they haven't used that much the first couple games. I think they've only done it a couple times. And if Iowa does stack the box, that's another way that they can kind of keep Iowa honest a little bit. Because if you're stacking 8 in the box, and that jet sweep can really get out on the outside and give you some good yardage sometimes. So it's going to be interesting to see if they use that a little bit more. I think Hornibrook. I think he's probably a better player than a lot of fans think he is, but then again, you just don't know when his bad games are going to come, and you don't know when his turnovers are going to come. And so I think as we've seen these first few games, he still has the bad turnover in him, and you don't want him to pull that out. at a bad moment like he did against BYU. So I think that's something he still needs to get better at. Okay, Mark Wolfgram at Mark W. Wolfgram asks, what does the tape show on the offensive line? Seems overrated so far, but I'm not an expert. How good would Nate Stanley look in Badger Red? He's such a different quarterback than Hornibrook. As far as the offensive line, I don't think they've played as well as you would hope, for a line with 3 All-Americans and a freshman All-American and everything like that. I think, like I mentioned in our film room story this week, I don't think David Edwards has had a good season yet, and I think he made some mistakes against BYU, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of if he can turn that around. I think it's he was an All-American last season, preseason All-American this season, and he just hasn't quite played up to that level so far. And I still think there's the guys on the interior have been pretty good still. I think obviously there were some missteps against BYU, but I do think on the totality of the 3 games, the 3 interior guys have looked pretty good. And I think Cole Van Lanen played really well in those first 2 games, and maybe BYU was his toughest test as well, and Dietzen obviously was splitting time with him, but it's just not quite. I think with the exception of Edwards, I'd say individually each one has played pretty decent, but as a group, I just think that it's not quite where you'd expect from a line that's touted as one of the best in the country. And I just think that that's the thing. With this offense, like their line has to be good for them to reach close to whatever potential we thought they were going to have at the start of the season. And I think the line has got to start dominating a little bit more for this offense to really take off. And maybe we'll see that against Iowa. Maybe BYU was a wake-up call for those guys and the offense as a whole, and maybe they can have a good game here and surprise some people, and Wisconsin can really get back on track here. But that's, again, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not at a point, you use the word overrated. I'm not at a point where I'm going to call them overrated, because I just think it's maybe a bad start to the season. So I after 3 games, I'm kind of withholding, on calling them overrated, but I do think they need to step up and play a little bit better. All right. Another one from Ryder Cup Captain at Cup Captain. He asks, sold or not sold? Wisconsin has the thinnest offensive playbook in the Power 5 conferences. Now, I don't think I'm sold on that. I don't think there's anything wrong with Wisconsin's playbook, and I've talked about this a lot the past couple of weeks, honestly. I think Wisconsin, look, Paul Chryst has been successful with this style of offense for a long time, and you do have a Heisman Trophy running back and a lot of talent on the offensive line, and they're going to try to establish the running game to open up the passing game and their play action. And I know a lot of fans I'm not sure if this is specifically what you're asking, but I know a lot of fans have kind of said, that they need to just go out and start throwing the ball early and on first down a lot. And I just don't know if that's that's the answer. I think if you do that and then you go out and Hornibrook has a bad game, then people are wondering why they're passing so much. So again, in hindsight, after a bad game, it always looks like they should have done something different, but I don't think they're in a situation where anything's going to change with the playbook, and I don't think that there's anything really wrong with what they're doing offensively. I think they just need to execute a little better, and again, getting Neville back would really help, and their offensive line, if they're able to play a little bit better. I think things just haven't clicked yet, and maybe they will at some point. Okay, Sean at Lanzarus21, he asks, how much new scheme should we expect to see this week on both sides of the ball for Wisconsin? That's a good question. I think defensively, I think at this point in the year, defensively, you start to open up a little more as far as bringing out some different blitz packages. I think the first 2 games were pretty vanilla defensively for Wisconsin, and so I think they're going to start ramping up. Kind of showing different looks and doing some different things defensively. I don't think much will change offensively, really. I think they definitely want to get their running game more consistent, and I think that it's going to be, again, if Neville's out, it's going to be difficult to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe they'll throw the jet sweep in a little bit more. They might throw some wrinkles here and there that they didn't show the first 3 games, but I don't think a whole lot will change offensively. And we have a few questions to end us off here from, I don't know if these are serious or not, but they're from Ryan Parbirdie at Parbirdie. Will Hornibrook's regression continue? Is Hornibrook the worst quarterback in the Power 5, and will we lose by more or less than 24 points? Okay, so those are a little bit of a overreaction, but no, I definitely don't think Hornibrook's the worst quarterback in the Power 5. I don't think he's regressed. I think people kind of, whenever he makes a bad turnover, I think people kind of lose their head a little bit and they talk about him regressing. And I mean, he's always had that issue, right? He's always had the issue of, play well for most of the game, but then you make a bad mistake that could be costly. And I think he's still kind of working that through, but I think he has become steadily a better passer and a more accurate passer. And I don't think he's regressed. I think he just needs to, continue to work on taking care of the football and not making that bad mistake that he's gonna regret. And no, I definitely don't think Wisconsin will lose by 24 or more points. I think my prediction was, I'm kind of going, I think Wisconsin will win a close game. I've kind of gone back and forth. I think they're going to win. I think my prediction in the paper was 20-16 Wisconsin. I think it's going to be a pretty defensive game. I think it's going to be, again, I think it's going to take another week for Wisconsin's offense to kind of get going. But I think Wisconsin's defense will fare okay in this game. And I think they really need the bye week coming up, win or lose this game. If you're a Wisconsin fan, I think you just hope that the Badgers can find a way to win this game in a really tough environment, and then just regroup during the bye week and come back a little stronger and have that leg up in the Western Division and kind of start anew after the bye week. And if they're able to win this game, I think you at least have a chance for them to get the season back on track. All right, thanks for all the questions, guys. I appreciate that. If you didn't get a question in, we will have a live chat on Twitter after Saturday's game against Iowa. Now, it's going to be probably the middle of the night because, we got to get my stuff done for the paper and probably get back to the hotel before we do it. So if you're up in the middle of the night on Saturday night or early Sunday morning, then I might have a live chat for you. So follow me on Twitter at Jason_Galloway and keep visiting madison.com for all of your Badgers football news. Thanks for listening.